Wildlife Rehab. We're a not-for-profit wildlife rehab in Klamath Falls, Oregon, and we take in injured orphan wildlife and do our best to get them back out there into the wild. A lot of times their injuries are too extensive or too severe, and we can't release them. In which case we look at whether we can make them animal ambassadors or not. Recently we had a turkey vulture come in, Dexter, who's posing so nicely, and you'll get to see him up close after the presentation. He's just kind of acclimating right now. This is actually his second official presentation. Last night was his first, so he's posing and showing off. I think he likes this animal ambassador spotlight kind of thing. So you'll get a chance to meet Dexter up close and personal a little bit later. But Dexter came into us with a broken wing. He's showing you quite nicely that that right wing extends to roughly half of that 7-foot wingspan. The left wing does not. That's as far as it goes. Dexter was hit by car. Number one reason we get vultures in, or any bird in, for rehab. But vultures, of course, being carrion eaters, are frequently down on the side of the road because that's where the roadkill is. So these guys are down there having something to eat, and along comes a car, and they get nailed. So we'll go into detail about that a little bit later, but all my life I've loved vultures. I just think they're the coolest, neatest critters on the planet. Recently I watched a TED Talk. Somebody know what a TED Talk is? It's like these online things, and hopefully my computer will cooperate with me this time and not keep doing this. If not, we have a backup computer. I watched a TED Talk on vultures put on by a Dr. Morani. Or near Morani, and it was just fascinating. But the fact that struck me most was that globally, especially over in India, Africa, Asia, places like that, vulture populations have declined by as much as 95% globally. That means we have 5% left of our original vulture populations. So that got me really curious as to why. What's going on? What's happening with our vultures? Is it happening here in the United States as well? So when Civic City asked us to come back and present, we usually do a general presentation like we did last night, and then they say, well, let's do something a little more specific. What do you want to do? I said, can I do vultures? Is that too gross? Is that too weird? You know, is anybody going to come? I mean, can I do vultures? So thank you all for coming. Appreciate that. And what I'm going to do is spend about 45 minutes here or so trying to convince you, or showing you why I love the bald guys, and trying to convince you to do the same. So the first thing is that I think they're really, really cool. But usually when I say something to somebody about, oh, vultures, and I say, what do you think of vultures? The response I get is that vultures are something of a cross between a bird and a devil. Angry birds, I think, are just the perfect personification of this. There's a place back east that is having a real problem with vultures congregating in large numbers in one area, and they interviewed some of the residents, and one guy had a very common sentiment that I hear. And that is that they smell like ammonia and sewage. I walk around the corner, there's 50 of them sitting up on the gravestones, hissing. It's like living in a horror movie. If it was up to me, I'd kill every one of them. And I think, what a narrow, naive point of view. We got to work on this. And I've got to work on being able to talk to them here. There we go. So, most of us have a picture in our head of vultures, and it consists of that bare head. This is a turkey vulture on this side, like Dexter. That's one of the old world vultures on the other side. But common things, bald head, just like we saw in Susan's condor presentation earlier, these sort of weird prehistoric distended feet that look sort of out of proportion. But there's good reason for all of this. You're sticking your head inside a rotting carcass. If you have long hair, and I say, rub your head in this plate of spaghetti, would you? Which one of you out here is going to be the best off? Somebody who doesn't have a whole lot up here, you know? It's going to be a whole lot easier to wash it out. So vultures have those naked heads for a reason. It's much more sanitary. They are standing, if you think about how a vulture feeds, it's standing on this rotting carcass, eating. Rotting carcasses are mushy. You don't want little tiny dainty feet. You're literally going to sink in. So think of these as snowshoes for slushy meat. Basically what they are is these big old feet that help them get enough purchase on this slippery, mushy carcass that they can go ahead and keep purchase so that they can tear away their food. Some other great quotes I think about vultures. One of my favorites is from Arthur Bent, who wrote the Life Histories of North American Birds of Prey. I just like the way he words it. It's so poetic. The vultures gather around the carcass and wait patiently near at hand until time and decay. Until time and decay, making it soft and ripe, shall fit to their needs, and then they descend and strip it to the bone. And it's just such a lovely, poetic way of saying, this is really cool. They wait till it gets really rotten and gross, and then they eat it. I just think that's really nice. So what that means is vultures are our garbage collectors out there in the world, but not quite like this, much more like this. They are the ones that are cleaning up the carrion. This is critical to our environment and our ecosystems, because that little armadillo right there that's rotting away is full of all kinds of disease and bacteria that the vultures can then digest and remove from the environment. We'll go into that in a little more detail. But first I want to talk about vultures in general a little bit. There are two categories of vultures. There are the Old World vultures, which are found in Asia, Africa, and Europe. And then we have the New World vultures, which are found in North and South America. Similar characteristics: naked heads, big old crazy feet, right? Similar lifestyles. They all eat rotting carcasses. But the truth is that these two groups of birds are not closely related at all. They exist because of what's called convergent evolution. And what that means is they each landed on different continents. They each found a need to fill with this removal and cleaning up the environment from these nasty rotting carcasses. So they evolved into similar characteristics: the bald head, the big feet, but yet they are not closely related. There are 16 species of Old World vultures. Again, similar characteristics between them all. And yet, because there are so many in these areas, some of them have evolved to be even a little more specialized. If you look at the second one from the bottom down there, the bearded vulture, you will notice that not only does he have feathers all over his head, he's actually got a beard too. Now come on, why in the world would you want all of that when we just talked about how hard it is to clean everything out, right? Because it looks cool, exactly. He's like the gangsta vulture, you know? The reason is, he doesn't eat rotting meat. He has evolved as a specialist to eat marrow, bone marrow. So he hangs back and waits and lets all these other bald-headed guys come through and clean everything up for him. Then he takes the bones and eats all the marrow out. So he stays nice and trim and clean and tidy. Some of the other Old World vultures here, we'll talk a little about a couple of them. I don't begin to have time or the knowledge really to go in specifically to each one of these different ones, but they have all evolved kind of their own little niche within the niche of the vulture world. Then our New World vultures, we have 7 species. We have, in South America, the yellow-headed, greater and lesser. The king vulture, which is probably the most distinctive looking of all the vultures, New or Old World, with all that yellow and orange going on around his head. We have the Andean condor, the California condor, which Susan just talked about quite extensively. And then here in North America, we also have our turkey vulture like Dexter here. And then the black vulture, which is found mostly more to the south and on the east coast. So, we'll come back to the king vulture and his color there in a minute, just because it's so really cool. But when you talk about classifying birds, okay, you look at this and you see that, well, wait a minute, just in the New World vultures, we've got Chimnogifs. Wait a minute, why so many different species? Genus, why so many different genera? And you look at the old world vultures, and we got a bunch of gyps, that's great, but then we got, what's all this stuff? Torgos, Tyrannosaurs, gyps. Why? These are all vultures, right? Well, I'm going to take everybody back just a little bit to high school biology and what was called taxonomic classification. It was developed by Linnaeus in about 1758, and it breaks every living thing down into kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. King Philip called the order his family of genus subjects, however you were taught to remember it. So, if we're going to break down a bird, and I picked a common one, everybody knows what a pigeon is, right? Common rock dove. The kingdom is Animalia, that's all animals. The phylum is Chordata, that's anything with a spinal cord. The class is Aves, any bird, okay? Then the order, if you are a pigeon, is Columbiformes, the family Columbidae, genus Columba, species Livia, which gives us the two-name or binomial nomenclature. A rock dove is correctly called the Columbia livia. Piece cake, right? So let's look at vultures. And I'm going to tell you why we're not going to talk about how to classify vultures. Obviously, they're animals, so it's kingdom Animalia. They have a spinal cord, so it's spinal chordata. They're a bird. It's class Aves. Now we get a little sticky. When they first started classifying these guys, they put them all into a group called Falconiformes. That included all of the daytime predators. The falcons, the hawks, the eagles, and the vultures. And everybody said, great, look at them. They all look alike. They all have hooked beaks. They all have weird feet. They all hunt during the day. This makes perfect sense. Then, in recent years, we've been able to do DNA testing. And DNA testing showed that falcons are more closely related to parrots and robins than they are to hawks, eagles, vultures. Even though they look similar, DNA shows us falcons aren't related. So they said, wait a minute, we got this great idea. I know what we'll do. We'll leave the falcons in that group, and we'll call them Falconiformes, and it'll consist of the falcons and the caracaras, because we don't know where to put the caracaras, and they sort of are closer to falcons. So we'll just put them together. And then we'll create this new group called the Simitriformes, and that will have the eagles, the hawks, and the only New World vultures. I'm going to say, great, we love this idea. Perfect. Wait a minute. Old World vultures and New World vultures bear no DNA resemblance to each other. Convergent evolution. They're not related to each other. Oh, okay. So let's pull out the New World vultures, and we'll create a new group for them, and we'll call them Cathartiformes. Everybody good with that? Sure. Till somebody came along and said, wait a minute, we did more DNA testing on the New World vultures, and they're related to storks. So we think we ought to put them in with the storks. So, I don't want anybody telling me that I classified anything incorrectly, because I'm not going to classify anything. We do know that vultures have been around for a long time. There is fossil evidence of the prehistoric black vulture, Origins occidentalis, back to the early Pleistocene about 2.5 million years ago. Real close to here in the Dalles, they found some subfossil evidence. What that means is it wasn't quite fossilized yet, but it was well on its way, which dates to about 8,000 to 9,000 years BCE. Do you guys know what BCE is? Yeah, well, it used to be BC, right? But everybody decided that was a religious term. So science doesn't like mixing with religion, so they changed it to BCE, before current era. Now we aren't talking religion at all, it's strictly science. Still means the same date. But even then, they said, well, wait a minute, there's a Origins occidentalis mexicanus that's down south, and occidentalis is north, and how do these guys relate to our black vulture, the Origins? We're back to that. Let's argue about taxonomy. So that's all we're going to say about that. But we do know, not only because of the fossil evidence, but because of mythological, stories of mythology in many, many different cultures that we have record of vultures being around a long time. In Hindu mythology, there are many, many stories about vultures or half-vulture humans helping out the people. Some of the common ones that you can Google real quickly and find easily are Garuda, Simpati, and Jatayu. If we look at Egyptian mythology, the goddess Nekhbet was considered to be the representative of, depending on what you read, fertility, femininity, feminine power, child energies. And people are so fascinated with this that there's even a big debate as to whether this stone carving is a griffin vulture or a Lappin-faced vulture. What do you think? I think we need. So, I mean, people are just thrilled by this stuff. If you look at Mayan legend, they believe that the king vulture brought messages between the gods and the humans, therefore it must be a well-respected being, ergo the name king vulture. On the other end of the Mayan spectrum, the black vulture was ugly and associated with death, and they didn't like him at all. So, poor little black vulture. Just a note here on the king vulture with that brightly colored face. Nobody knew for a long time what was going on there, and recent studies have shown that there are a few vultures that do have these really bright characteristics. A couple of the old world ones do too. That they are probably eating dung from cows and other ruminants, which is where they're getting a lot of carotenoid material, plant material, with a lot of carotenoids, beta-carotene, that kind of stuff in it. And those bright colors show their fitness or their health. And when you are choosing a mate, whether you're a vulture or a robin or a human, you obviously want to choose one that's going to be a good provider, that's healthy and strong and really good at coping with the environment. Well, it turns out if you have a vulture that's really bright and vibrant in these areas, it shows good fitness, good health, and a probable good choice for your mate. In India, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce this town, I tried to learn it and I gave up. But there's a monastery there that every single day for over 40 years had a pair of vultures that would come to the monastery, land on the rock. The religious people there would feed them a ceremonial meal, and the vultures would fly on. And the next day they'd come back. We know that vultures can cover great distances. We know they can live 40, 50 years. So we'll debate on whether it was the same pair of vultures, but for 40 years they came by every single day. The last time they were seen was in 1998, and a vulture has not been spotted in this area since. They were the last pair, apparently. So I titled this Why I Love Bald Guys because I want to make you guys love bald guys too. So we're going to talk about what makes vultures so special. We know that they have the amazing ability to eat this disgusting, rotting stuff. Anybody ever had food poisoning? That's E. coli. These carcasses are filled with it. You know what it does to us when we eat E. coli. These guys can not only eat it and not get sick, but their systems just eradicate it. Their stomach contents are similar to battery acid. And it just kills E. coli, all these different diseases. So they actually clean the environment of anthrax, botulism, cholera, rabies, E. coli, all of these different things that are out there. Vultures hunt by sight or smell, not both. Not very many birds have a good sense of smell. But if we're talking about old world vultures, they hunt by sight. Most New World vultures hunt by a little bit of both. Turkey vultures are the amazing sense of smell guys. All vultures can travel over 100 miles a day at speeds of up to 60 miles an hour. What they do is they ride thermals or rising hot air currents as high as they can. Then when the current sort of dissipates at the top, they start gliding in the direction they want to go. They start losing altitude. But it's effortless flight. Think hang gliders jumping off of cliffs. It's effortless flight, and when they start getting kind of low, they'll find another thermal. Right as I could find was a Rappel's griffin vulture, which is one of the African vultures, collided with a plane at 37,000 feet. Just amazing that a bird is flying around that high. They not only eat the gross stuff, they eat a ton of it. Vultures can eat up to 10% of their body weight in a single feeding. Okay? Let's just say that roughly I ate 15 pounds of food in one meal. That's about the equivalent. Then I tried to run a marathon. I can't do it. They can do it and then still fly. The New World vultures were, okay, it's really cool. New World vultures tend to live in really hot, dry climates, right? There's not a lot of water out there. It's really hard to cool yourself off. What's the best, most efficient way to do it? Pee on your legs. It's called urohydrolysis, which sounds a lot more technical and fancy and cool. But basically that's what they do, is they pee on their legs. They have a lot of blood vessels in their legs, so that urine then evaporates. It cools the blood flowing through their legs. That cooler blood flows through their body, and it cools off the whole bird. Okay, it's kind of gross. But think about it. Sweating, that's really attractive, right? How? All methods of cooling are really gross. Vomiting as protection. Okay, everybody knows if you're going to get into a fight, right, if you're going to go into combat with someone, you might win, but you risk getting injured in the process, right? Well, if your means of defense is to stand 6 feet away from your enemy and projectile vomit half-rotten meat and battery acid stomach contents into their eyes, you're good. They can't touch you. So it's a really incredibly great means of defense, especially for an animal that really doesn't have any other means. Unlike an eagle or a hawk that has that really powerful beak and those huge, powerful talons, these guys just don't have those capabilities or weapons. So it's an awesome defensive mechanism. The other really cool thing they use it for is, let's say we've got a dead elephant. Big carcass, right? You can't eat that all in one day. So what they'll do is eat some and then vomit around the carcass in a circle. And all the hyenas and lions and all these other guys with really sensitive senses of smell that vulture puke and they won't come near it. So it's kind of their way of like staking their territory to their little carcass. We have tool usage. And pardon me, I'm going to back up a second and go back just so it doesn't shut off on me again. It was, what is her name? Jane Goodall, who first, one of the first documented observations in Africa, vultures will take ostrich eggs, which are incredibly thick-shelled and hard to crack. And they will take pebbles and fly up with the pebbles and drop them onto the ostrich eggs and crack the egg open so they can eat the egg. The really cool thing is, this is not a learned behavior. It is innate. You can take a little fuzzball baby vulture, you can take an egg and hatch it. You can, when they grow up, put them in an enclosure, take an egg and crack it in front of them and show them that there's good stuff inside of it, then give them a whole egg and a pebble, and they know to go take that pebble, bring it over, and crack the egg with the pebble. The minute they learn there's good stuff in an egg, and they have access to pebbles, they know how to do this. Then there's some vultures in Bulgaria, cold, right? Bulgaria, really cold. You've got a naked head. Uh-oh. So you want to keep really warm. You really want that nest well insulated. They will take twigs and go around to where there's like sheep ranches, and they will wrap the wool up onto the twigs so that they can collect bunches and bunches of wool at one time, and then take that back to the nest and use it to line their nest, rather than getting one little bitty bit of wool at a time. Pretty darn smart. Vultures help natural gas companies save money. Everybody smelled the natural gas leak, right? You leave the stove burner on a little bit, it's that sulfur, rotting egg kind of smell. Yep. Natural gas by itself has no odor. So they add chemicals to it to give it that smell so that you can detect it if you do have a gas leak. Well, if you think about the miles and miles of pipeline that stretch across deserts that are piping natural gas, if they get a little shift in the earth or an earthquake or something and they detect a leak, their fancy equipment tells them there's a leak, But it doesn't tell them, is it in Tucson or Big Sur or, where is it out there in this hundreds of miles of pipeline? Well, it turns out that that smell mimics the methane smell coming off of a rotting carcass. Turkey vultures here can smell a rotting carcass from up to 4 miles away, depending on the temperature and the wind conditions. So these guys will go out into the desert, they'll start driving along and they'll start looking for where turkey vultures are congregating. And they get to the spot, and these poor vultures, you got to figure, they're so confused. They're flying overhead going, I can smell it. Where the hell is it? Do you see the carcass? I don't see the carcass. Where is it? But I smell the carcass. Where? And what they're doing is detecting that natural gas leak. So the gas companies have determined that vultures save them a ton of money in terms of time and resources to locate these leaks. Just very recently, vultures are helping law enforcement officers in Germany find missing bodies. Now, mind you, by the time you call out the vultures, we're probably not looking for a really good outcome on that missing body or missing person, but it does at least help them find the evidence, which then helps them solve the case. So they've actually imported turkey vultures to Germany to help with that. Then they have really cool group names. Okay, I've always been kind of fond of, why is it a pod of whales and a flock of this and a murder of crows and whatnot, okay? Does anybody know what you call a group of vultures up in the sky? That's a kettle. When they're all sitting in a tree, it's a committee. And how accurate is that? Let's all sit around, spread our wings out, hang our heads down, and get absolutely nothing accomplished. Sounds like a committee to me. But my really favorite one is when they're all down on a carcass. It's called a wake. Very appropriate, I think.
Why do they call them turkey vultures? Is it because their heads are red like a turkey's? Or?
That's entirely possible.
You don't know?
I don't know. Ornithologists are weird people, and I say this as someone who's been birding since I was old enough to hold the binoculars. They do weird things with names. We used to have sparrowhawks, okay? Then somebody said, you morons, it's not a hawk, it's a falcon. Oh, do they change the name to sparrow falcon? No, it's now an American kestrel. Why? I have no idea. Vultures even have their own holiday. The first Saturday in September is Vulture Day. And there are a whole lot of zoos and aviaries and different organizations that try and spread the word about how really cool vultures are. Think about it. Do eagles have their own holiday? No, but vultures do. They are our cleanup crew. They are renowned for cleaning carcasses down to the bone, and if you happen to have bearded vultures around, they'll even clean out the marrow and the bones. But studies have shown that if you don't have vultures working on that decomposition, the carcasses take 4 to 5 times longer to decompose, and in some environments where it's real humid, they don't even decompose that fast. So they're really a vital part of the environment. 100 white-backed vultures, which are probably one of the most common ones down in Africa, can strip a 100-pound carcass in 3 minutes. And seeing 100 white-backed vultures in one spot is not uncommon. It's getting less common, though, due to their decline.
It's like a person.
That is a person. My slide is a little out of alignment, but for hundreds and hundreds of years, many cultures have relied on vultures for what are called sky burials. In Tibet, for example, the ground is too rocky and too hard to bury your dead. There is not much firewood. You cannot afford to burn wood to cremate your dead. So what they do is they build these platforms, and they put their dead up on the platform, and the vultures know where the platform is, and in they all come and perform what's called a sky burial, leaving nothing but virtually completely stripped dry bone left. The Zoroastrians rely on this heavily because it is a major religious violation to bury your dead. Dead are considered very unclean in the Zoroastrian religion. So you cannot bury them because you defile the earth. You cannot burn them because you defile the air. You cannot throw them in the ocean because you defile the water, the three main elements of life. So they rely on sky burials completely because it is the only way that their religion allows them to dispose of their deceased people that is in conjunction with their beliefs. Because of the decline in vulture populations, I want to say it was in Africa, but don't quote me on that. There was a group of Zoroastrians that have been doing sky burials there for hundreds of years, many generations. They had put someone up on the sky burial platform. A month or so later, someone else in the tribe died. They went to put him up there and were horrified to discover that the first one had not been taken care of. The vultures had declined that significantly that their only means of disposing of their dead that is in conjunction with their religion has been removed because of the decline in vultures. In areas with reduced vulture populations, we see a huge resurgence of other predators and pests. In India, the biggest problem they have is feral dogs. The feral dog populations have increased so significantly that their incidence of rabies has increased to critical levels. It is, and again, depends on which study you read, but there are roughly 18 million wild dogs. Think of that, 18 million wild dogs roaming the dumps in India. And that results in a person getting bitten every 2 seconds. Someone dies of rabies in India every 30 minutes. So since I started talking, somebody just died of rabies in India. Roughly 30,000 people die of rabies every year. That is over half the world total. All because of the decline in vultures, which has allowed this increase in the feral dog population. The other problem is dogs, rats, these other things that we see take over when vultures don't exist. Those are not to use a pun, but those are not dead-end predators. Dogs and rats can become carriers of rabies, anthrax, botulism, E. coli, all these other diseases. Vultures cannot. When they consume that tissue that has those diseases, that's it. It's eradicated. It's gone. They are a dead end for those diseases. But these new predators are not. They're also not nearly as efficient. And now the other thing that we're finding, especially in India, is the cattle that die are left out to rot. Cattle are sacred. Cattle's good English. Cattle are sacred in India. So if a cow dies, they leave it, and the vultures will clean it up in a matter of a couple of minutes. No big deal. Now, because of the decline in vulture populations, those carcasses are rotting, attracting the rats and the feral dogs. And what is happening is, in several areas, all of this botulism, cholera, plague, whatnot, is leaching into the water systems, and they're losing their clean water supplies. Why are our vultures declining? Well, of the 16 species of Old World vultures, 6 in Africa are highly threatened, 4 in India are critically endangered. Critically endangered means if we don't do something significant in the next 10 years, they will go extinct. The populations are declined enough, or we do what they did with the condors, we pull everything in from the wild, put it into a captive breeding program, cross our fingers and pray that we can bring them back. Our New World vultures, we know that condors have been at high risk of extinction for a long time. And then I just read a study that was done on the East Coast with black vultures and a few turkey vultures. They pulled in over 100 birds. Every bird they studied had toxic levels of lead. Partly because of ammunition. Also, because more so on the East Coast than the West Coast, there are a number of coal-fired power plants. And I didn't know this, but apparently a coal-fired power plant puts off a whole lot of lead into the environment. And these birds are around these environments, and they're picking up these environmental levels of lead. Specifically in our Old World vultures, in India, they not only when a cow died, it died, and that was a problem, but because their cattle are sacred and they were trying to keep them healthy, they were using an antibiotic called diclofenac. Diclofenac is toxic to vultures. So the cow would die, it was full of diclofenac, the vulture would eat it, and the vultures would all die. Now, mind you, we're talking about 100 vultures descending on one cow, and 100 vultures dying in one fell swoop. In Africa, there were a lot of pastoral communities that raised cattle, and of course you've got lions and tigers and bears, I know not in Africa, but lions and hyenas and whatnot that'll prey on those cattle. So they were intentionally putting out poisoned carcasses to kill the large predators. Well, of course, here come the vultures. Oh, look, dead cow, yum. And we were poisoning the vultures in Africa. There's also a pretty large trade in the fetish market, and in voodoo, vulture parts are very valuable. So there are people that are intentionally killing vultures to cull those parts for voodoo ceremonies and for fetish trade. Old story, not going to concentrate on it, but DDT, Aldrin, all these other pesticides obviously affect every creature out there. And then, kind of surprisingly, wind turbine fields. I'm not going to get into a debate about alternative energy. I am all for anything other than fossil fuels, except when it doesn't turn out to be much better. Wind turbines, as one of the Vulture experts described it, are bird blending machines. This is what happens to a bird and a wind turbine. It happens both in the old world and the new world. In Spain alone, they have a fairly decent-sized wind turbine field. They are documenting 1,000 vulture deaths per year due to wind turbine. In Africa, I believe in Kenya, they are just about to put in one of the largest wind turbine fields in the world. Imagine what that's going to do to the few remaining vultures in Africa. What can we do? Well, there are a lot of other sources of energy. I just saw the coolest program on, I think it was Discovery, a couple of weeks ago. Back in, don't quote me, I'm trying to remember from too many things in my brain, but I think it was in 1940, 75% of our power came from water. Water wheels, right? Then we got away from that and said, oh look, we can burn oil and coal and all this other cool stuff. Bad idea. Now, there is a company, I believe, right in Portland, that is creating water turbines. And you know these big water pipelines that pipe water all the way down from Colorado River to San Diego and Alaska down wherever? They're installing these water turbines in these pipelines. And as the water runs through, it's creating energy. No harm, no foul, no cost to anybody. They're even working on some that are small enough to fit in your household water pipes, so that hopefully, when you take your shower, you generate enough money to light your bathroom and keep the heater running so when you get out, you don't freeze. And it's becoming a very real possibility. Portland's one of the few places that I know of that is working on this, but it's really working out well so far. Unfortunately, my slides did not reproduce very well, but in the New World vultures, just like Susan was talking about in the condors, lead is our biggest issue. This is a picture of a condor that has ingested a lot of lead. There's a lot of lead fragments from eating other animals that were shot and killed with lead bullets. Conversely, this is a turkey vulture that was shot with lead shot. Do you see all these little dark white spots? That's all lead shot. Why would somebody shoot a turkey vulture? Well, we looked at ranchers. There is still a huge misconception out there that vultures kill livestock. That can't kill anything. It doesn't have the power. If you were here last night, you saw me pick him up barehanded and walk around with him. He nibbled on my finger. I'm fine. He doesn't have the power. Where the misconception comes from is when an animal is born, there's afterbirth. They'll eat that. Yeah. It's dead, it doesn't move, it's really nutritious. Cool. Let's say the calf is stillborn. Okay, yeah, he'll eat that. The rancher comes out, doesn't know the calf was stillborn, sees a vulture eating his brand new baby calf, shoot them, talked about, and then vehicle collisions. They eat roadkill, people. Where is roadkill? On the road. So, one thing that we can all do to help our vultures, when you are driving down the road and you see the roadkill deer, rabbit, squirrel, whatever it is, please slow down. Don't go speeding by at 65 miles an hour thinking, well, the deer's dead, what the heck? There could very well be vultures, hawks, eagles, magpies, jays, crows, ravens, a myriad of different things down there having lunch. If they've eaten 10% of their body weight, they aren't going to take off real fast. They have a heck of a time taking off from the ground anyway. And then you add 10% of their body weight, they can't move out of your way. Slow down a little bit and give them some room, please. Some other ways you can help. Spread the word, okay? Talk to your friends. If you know ranchers, talk to them. If they say, yeah, vultures kill livestock, have them call me. Okay? My number's on the card back there. Encourage them to research, find out what's going on. Spread the word to people about slowing down around carcasses, about not using lead ammunition, lead tackle, for those of you that fish. Well, how would a vulture get a hold of tackle? Anybody ever had a fish swallow a hook, a weight, anything like that? Vulture comes along and eats the fish. There it goes. We have x-rays, all kinds of, I don't get enough time, but we have x-rays of all kinds of bizarre things in their guts. You know, like Susan was talking about earlier. They like shiny things. They'll pick up broken glass, they'll pick up pop tops, they'll pick up lead weights laying on the side of the beach. It's cool and shiny. You know, they don't know what's going to kill them. You can reduce, reuse, and recycle. We all say it. I'll bet there's probably 2 or 3 people in this room that either have or have had a bumper sticker that says something to that effect. But how many of us do it every day? How many of us, and I'm in the group, okay? I'm going to leave here with my recyclable water bottle. I've got a 7-hour drive back to Klamath Falls. I can throw it in my truck, take it home, and put it in my recycling bin, or I can drop it in the trash on my way and not worry about it. You know? Conscious decisions. Think about all these things. How many little things? Who runs the water in the sink for a few minutes to get it a little warm? Is all that water going down the drain? Why? Put a pot in your sink, run the water while it's getting hot. Now you've got a nice bucket of water to go water your flowers with. How about the shower? Huge amount of water. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Every time, think about it. You pull that piece of tin foil off of something. Can you wash it and reuse it? Probably. Unless you cook like I do. You can support alternative renewable energy sources. You live near Portland? Find out about this water project. Can you help? Can you become a test home? Have them install it in your home line. See. I don't know. But find out. Support bans on lead ammunition, please. Carcass relocation, I speak about very, very hesitantly. I don't ever want anyone to risk their own life to try and save wildlife. It doesn't help. You can't help them if you're injured, and I obviously am not suggesting that anyone risk their life. However, if it's a dead straight road, you can see traffic in either direction, it's broad daylight, there's nobody coming, and here's the dead thing in the middle of the road. If you can safely drag it off to the side so that the scavengers can eat it without being a risk for the semi, great. But please do not ever risk your own life to do that. Then get involved on Vulture Day. What are you doing the first Saturday in September? I don't know. Find out. You know, head up to the Portland Zoo. See if they're doing something. If not, say, why aren't you doing something? Come on, let's start a Vulture Day. You can start one in your own community. But there's a lot of different things that you can do to help our vultures. The old world vultures, as I said at the beginning, 95% decline in their numbers. The new world vultures are not that bad yet, but they haven't been around as long. A couple of years at this rate, and we may see that kind of a decline in them. So I hope by now you all agree with me. Bald is beautiful. Yeah, it's just, you know, it's about as good looking as it gets right there. So, I'll stay legal here and throw out my acknowledgments for the ones that I didn't have on the screen. I am happy to answer questions for anybody, but I would like to thank you all for choosing to come indoors on this beautiful day.